In the meantime, GameStop shares are tumbling this morning. This came despite narrowing losses in the second quarter and reporting rising sales last night after the bell. Joining us right now to talk more about it is author Ben Mesrick. His new book, The Anti-Social Network, focuses on the GameStop saga, and it's out right now. And Ben, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Great. You look at this, and we watch what you've gotten into, from writing everything from The Accidental Billionaires that then turned out to be the Social Network movie about Facebook. How did you get into this, into GameStop? When did this kind of grab your fancy?
Yeah, I was watching it happen like everyone else. I mean, the stock market was exploding. GameStop was flying through the roof, and it was all being run by these kids sitting on their couches reading about it on Reddit. And everyone started to email me and say, you should be writing this story. And so I literally just dove in that morning. It was like January 26th, 28th. And I sold the movie, and I kind of figured out what the drama was. And it's just an incredible story of David versus Goliath's cousin versus Goliath's brother. But it really was one of those stories of regular people taking on Wall Street and trying to bring down the house. So I really wanted to write it.
You always look for the drama and ways to really get people interested in things that might not be as interesting otherwise. And so the idea of villains and heroes definitely has to play in this story. So who are the villains here? Who are the heroes from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the hero, I think the original hero is this kid. He's in his basement, and he's from Brockton, Mass., like a working class area, a guy named Keith Gill. And he was kind of a guy who was fumbling around looking for something. And he fell in love with the stock GameStop, which was kind of a ridiculous company at the time. I mean, they weren't doing well, but he really fell in love with the stock. And then he started posting about it on Wall Street Bets, which was this Reddit group that has grown to 10 million people. The villains, you know, in this story were Wall Street, essentially, was the idea of the guys in the suits and the ties who were shorting a beloved company, hoping it went down to zero during a pandemic. And I think the mob of Reddit people got very upset. It goes all the way back to 2008 and Occupy Wall Street, and the idea that Wall Street has been, you know, screwing the little person for a very long time, and here was a chance to strike back. And then there's Robin Hood, which sits in the middle of all of this and ends up, you have to decide whether they're a villain or not in the story.
Ben, you're looking at a snapshot in time, and I think everybody was kind of cheering on the idea that you couldn't be a short seller whispering rumors about a stock and have that stock come down. I think people were really thrilled to see the retail guys come back and say, no, 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 we're going to protect you from the short squeeze. But we are quite a bit past that at this point. You look at the stock now trading at $185. We had an analyst who used to cover the company, Anthony Chicumbo, who was on earlier, and I don't know if you heard some of his comments. He said things like, look, the emperor has no clothes. Eddie Lampert with Sears all over again. That's what he compared this to. He said it's nonsensical that the company is now valued at $15 billion because it's not in danger of going out of business. He said this stock makes sense to him at $10, not $185. What do you think of people who are coming out and saying it doesn't make sense that it's worth $15 billion?
You know, what I'm trying to say in this book, and what I think the reality is that the fundamentals and the value are untethered now. I think that the price of a stock isn't necessarily related to the fundamentals of the company anymore. And you see this in crypto with something like Doge. But the reality is if everyone loves the stock goes up. I do think GameStop has a chance of pivoting, and I think that's the goal. If they can pivot into something that really takes advantage of the digital world we're living in, they have a mass of people who love GameStop, who spend their time in those stores. And if they can switch to a digital type of business, they really could survive. But what are they actually worth? I think you got to read my book, but I think the reality is they're worth what the mob believes they're worth. And I think people are surprised the stock has stayed this high for this long because the fundamentals don't match the price. But I think people have to understand this is a new world, and the markets don't work that way anymore.
Yeah, and I wonder if that lasts. I mean, you've been around a while too, Ben. Usually when the fundamentals separate from where the stock price is, at some point there is a reversion to the mean. Do you think this really is a completely new reality, or do you think that this is another story where, not GameStop specifically, but just the general feel, things like NFTs, things like crypto, is there a point where there's a reversion to the mean?
You know, I really don't. I think there's ups and downs and ups and downs. I think what you see with crypto is this sort of peaks and valleys. I don't think there's a reversion to the mean. I think this is the new normal, these ebbs and flows, these massive stock rises when a bunch of people sentiment trumps fundamentals now. If everyone really wants something, it's going to go up. And I think you're going to see this again and again and again, and Wall Street has to take that into account.